excited about talking about The Illusion of the Shiny Object by Fatih Yıldız. Sorry if I did not pronounce that correctly. But I gotta say, I was looking into this author quickly, and congratulations to the author. Looks like the first article that they wrote that was that kind of took off here on Medium, and definitely one. There's just a lot going right for it. Short articles are usually intriguing if they're done correctly, and the author definitely chose the author did a lot with barely a page. Like this might be a bit more than a page if I printed it off. I didn't print this one off since it's a easy chat and great title. It even stood out right away. I already had something I wanted to talk about just after reading this title. And if you go right down to the end of the article, you're going to notice that this author is definitely in favor of reliability and stability in a engineering context. I've spoken before, but medium.com is definitely a platform that tailors to engineers and the engineering community because of how that community has used the platform for their own documentation and different, mostly documentation and walkthroughs of how to get certain things done. So the author wrote in the context of engineering and products that you're going to find on the market from engineers. Now, why I enjoy that is because that provides a tangible way to talk about an idea. Doesn't matter who it's written for. It's actually better that it's written for a specific professional or person. So, and in the engineering context, I'm not able to understand that. So I'm able to talk about it through that lens and step out of that lens for the audience. Now, right off the bat, the illusion of the shiny object. I have different stances when it comes to shiny objects. Shiny objects are fantastic for somebody who has studied things like motivation and all these different topics that you will see when you study business in the business faculty in a university or college. Now, a lot of people will talk about efficiency and subjects like that. The problem is you're going to hear me go on and on about efficiency. Efficiency has so many problems in terms of motivating individuals, and just think of it. Efficiency. If you've done a lot of programming, if you've done a lot of systems around your daily processes, if you've just lived life, you know that the most efficient setup that you've created for yourself is not the one that made you better. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with when we're trying to make a process or a system. We're trying to get better. Just this last week, I had a setup for like all my social media posting for my podcasts, and I found the one that was a little bit more work was actually the one that motivated me and got me more excited, and in turn took less time. Now, isn't that the most efficient one? No, it was not actually. The other one had, I think it took out a step of me planning in the articles and putting them myself, or planning in the videos and like putting them in a calendar myself versus having it automatically done. But there is a still work to be done outside of what was being automated. And when all the rest was being automated, I was finding that it was just very, very difficult for me to want to do work. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about progressive stances in life. And one of the ones that I do resonate with is when you're being detached from the final product. When somebody is working and they don't see the final product that's being done and they can't connect their work to that one, I do believe there's an impact there. Now, why talk about this when it comes to a shiny object and when it comes to efficiency and reliability, and don't go with something that's flashy and beautiful? Well, that's going to take a little bit of talking to get to the bigger point. But I can tell you right off the bat that the best solution, or the one that we would say on paper is probably the better one, the smarter one, the 80-year-old or the 90-year-old is going to be like, that's a wise decision. You know, we all know what those decisions are. You should have stuff that's reliable. You should have stuff that is solid. You should have stuff that's going to be there, no problems. You know, more work from people, more experienced people created it. I totally understand the benefits to that. When it comes to important stuff, I'm not telling you to go with I don't know if you call this side of it progressive, but I wouldn't go with the shiny new object bank. But I would go with the shiny new object on a weekly basis for a new motivation tool. Now, that doesn't mean my whole calendar is a shiny new object. So, this is why this author is particularly smart and or just struck gold, which is relevant to their image of gold. Now, the shiny new object, they draw an example between gold and another metal. You can take a look at that one by reading the article, because I'm sure there is a beautiful example there that works well for this conversation. I just don't need the example to prove this point, and I also feel like I'm taking away from the author a little bit by sharing that example. What I do want to talk about is some of the points that they were making. So when it comes to like, they talk about they mention phrases like long run, market is efficient, you know, distinguishing between don't confuse, like, we're not always looking for these super efficient solutions. That might seem like it doesn't need to get mentioned, but how many people are constantly needing to find the most efficient, scientifically backed stance or solution there is? And is it just me, or does that seem like it's not going to pay off? And if it is, it's not working for me. I could tell you that. And I'm not somebody who, I don't know what you would say about me. If there was somebody who needs motivation, that kind of not me, I guess. I guess I'm pretty motivated. But when it comes to like scientifically back, everything seems to have a little bit too much reason behind it. And motivation and the shiny new object. One of the big reasons why that's important is because it's the same as the spray that you put in the air. You know, people buy those sprays that are like rejuvenating. You know, it's placebo stuff, you know? But who told you that you can't use placebo to your advantage? And it's more than placebo. It's fresh. It's new. Things that are the same, you know, if you're going with reliable and consistent, there's no reason why reliable and consistent can't have a new UI. That's touching to his example for engineering. You might use a traditional application. That application can have many developers who create many different UIs. Love that for the right use case. Obviously, I've said more complex stuff, I'm not going to trust this innovative app if it's not insured, God, I don't even know if you could be a bank if you didn't go through all those steps. But I can tell you that shiny new object, how many people read this article and say the illusion of the shiny object? Who do we think is getting proven right here? Because there are a segment of people who are like, bingo, this explains me. And then there's some people on the opposite side. This says the opposite of what I say. And then there's some people who want to discuss between those two people. That's what I'm attempting to do, because I'm also in the middle of both of those people. I don't think, as I mentioned, that constant facts, constant everything, there is room for opinion in life. There is room for creativity. We talked about creativity on the last episode. There is room for mistakes, problems, experiencing. These are things that you cannot get when you talk through the lens of somebody who is not allowing for things that are imprecise or perfect in terms of being relatively better than all the alternatives. Because things, as with the discussion in the last episode on creativity, it matters about the person. That's something that I feel gets missed in not almost every, because almost every article that I read right now, it's hard to find them in general because almost everything is about AI and etc. But it's missing the individual. It's missing the individual and the individual's needs. My needs have nothing to do with what the most efficient solution is. I know what that is. And even in a business, are you telling me you're going to always look for the most efficient software? Let's have a discussion about that. You're always looking for the most efficient software in an organization. That sounds way too right to who? The very people that I say should not be taking up all the board of directors seats in an organization. If you are looking for the most efficient software or the most efficient solution all day in an organization, I could tell you that I could just run a computation on that. If not, I've got a full board of directors that could do that computation for me. So what makes that organization different from the other one? I.e., where people might be misunderstanding corporations and organizations, because it's not that simple. When you see me right in front of this camera, what do you see? You see a person. An organization is a set of people. And the set of people that make up that organization, this is the front and in the back end and front end, it's people. You choose who you want to deal with. I have a great example of this. I worked at two companies recently. One still with them, the other one not. One had great people, the other one had paper. It was basically like an Indeed hire, and it was just horrendous. Completely detached. Felt like all the requirements of a job, none of the support of a team, and God knows how many problems of nobody like making that their workplace. That was a place that you clock in to not get in trouble. Does anybody understand what I mean by that? It's very different from like my other workspace. I'm not saying you turn your work into your family. That's an illustration that's made. But the other side of that, the non-extreme example, when you know what you're talking about, no offense, is that you have a place that you actually call your workplace. This is a place that you go to perform at your best. This is a place that you go to work amongst your peers in your age group. 28 years old, you want to be working with who? People in the prime of their careers who are excelling. In the case of a restaurant, you are looking for Michelin stars. It takes stars to get there. Michelin stars versus the other 5-star restaurant. 5-star, to get into the context of the kitchen instead of engineering, is no requirement, and it's an absolute disgrace what makes it to 5 stars. We are not looking for 5 stars. Important to mention, because my workplace that looks for stars is made up of stars. And the quality that we produce is something that you couldn't replicate on your efficient decisions. A last place made efficient decisions. Look how that turned out. Kitchen stank. Shit wasn't being ordered. People weren't a team. Even worse, in the kitchen, you go up and down with your kitchen. Somebody's having a problem, that will get figured out by chef in the morning. Until that happens, we're wiping the floor together. That's how it works in any kitchen. You work in the kitchen industry. That's standard. Okay? You can't just run your organization and then blind yourself to the industry that you're in. We are professionals. We are talking. We have each other's contacts. I have contacts of the people that I work with in the kitchen. That place stinks. We all know it. Words out. It's not powerful. It's not any. It's how it goes. How many places have you worked? It sucks. Everybody knows that you work there. Almost everybody knows that it sucks. That's called the word on the street. You know, my current chef, a guy who worked at Michelin restaurants, knows that. Wants to know what's the street saying. Okay? When I'm out smoking, I hear people talking. I heard about this place. You think I don't hear that? Think I'm not sharing that information? We hear that. That's the caliber of people that you get when you're not looking for efficient. That's what you get. Caring. Okay? And do not mistake efficient by spreadsheet decisions. I cannot tell you. That is where it shows up, though. That number getting reduced, that number being bigger than the other one is an addiction. Because that number and how that number performs in the kitchen, very different, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very different. So different that it created how many organizations? There would be one kitchen. There would be one kitchen. I'm not going to get into this politics. We all know it. Anybody who's flaming on this, can we just put that aside for a second and have this conversation about something else? Because I'm not pushing the other side right now. Because because I'm resonating with you on the other side there too. Don't get me wrong. Your labor, yeah. You know, me and you together, okay? But I'm telling you that the extreme other side, the extreme of that side, doesn't work. Efficiency, capitalism, guys. Come on, that's a failing organization. That is not capitalism. Now, the kitchen I work at wipes the floor with the other guys. And that is an example, okay? It's one of the top kitchens. Okay, and in the announcements, we are going to be the best kitchen in this country. You think that's normal? It's not. Go to enough kitchens and understand that is not what you hear. You hear about problems in point form for a large enough kitchen. I've been there. Small enough kitchen, no communication. Where is that goal? Where is the drive? You don't even seem like you understand the kitchen industry. When I come to work, yes, chef. I greet you by chef. I want that standard. Okay. And I feel bad right away. Small mom and pop places. Okay. It's a beautiful experience. Thank you very much for the creations that you make. Okay. I'm sorry about that. That's a bad example too. Okay. Small places. It's even more important, maybe. The best part about talking in this format is realizing where I say something and I'm like, oh wait, there's actually a point on the other side of that. The small place. Inefficient. Different. It's not, it's what? Flashy and new. But this touches on efficiency. Inefficient. I could tell you that that place has made some people very, very happy. The small place. Small mom and pop kitchen. It doesn't even seem like they could hire somebody on a job posting. Oh, come on. That's like the adorable of the adorable. Okay, that's even less structured than anything that I know. I've worked at a place like that. That's why I'm thinking of it. Now I feel bad for saying that. But the point is that efficient decisions are the dangerous ones. Because we all have experiences with that. Now, the talk usually happens up here. I'm keeping it here, which is don't get overly political with it because then it starts to not even make sense. I like things that make sense to my day to day work. How many people have worked in kitchens? Front end or front house or back house? Lots. Most people can understand because most of us have eaten at one. Thank you very much for eating. We're all in this together. I can tell you that we have all been in the kitchen eating. Anybody back house will laugh at that. Because and we are always trying that food that comes out to you, but you've either eaten there, you've served it in the front, or you're in the back. And there's something we all want. A place that doesn't make you fall asleep. Who likes that? Who likes falling asleep because a place feels like check boxes? Done, done, done. Yep, yep, yep. The checkbox that has been on your to-do list as a recurring task for 2 months with the weekly reminder. You don't even see it anymore. You don't even see it anymore. You might stop doing it at some point. You don't see it anymore. Magically, I don't even use the feature anymore. It's that bad. The tasks section on the top of my Google Calendar, I added the wrong task in there. Feature's gone. Feature's gone. If you're listening to this via audio, I'm laughing. I'm seeing how I can develop that joke because it's quite droll. Okay, and it matches very much a kitchen experience and dining experience at a restaurant for employees, front, back house, and customers who we love very dearly, that we're falling asleep. We're falling asleep. We don't want to get rid of that restaurant. That's the feature, okay? We don't want to ruin eating. When you come and eat at our place, Chef's Place, I get thrown out with the rags for saying that. I don't, though, because it's about challenging. The things that you eat, number one, never expected. Okay? Number one, that's different. You expect what you're going to taste? You think you don't like something? You don't like it? Or it's like, I'm kind of iffy on that one. Boring. Okay? Nobody wants boring, and boring is what efficiency can get you. Okay? Because in this article, we're talking about diminishing returns. We're talking about efficiency. We're talking about shiny new objects. And I'm trying to propose an angle that is not common today. So many of us love to engineer. So many of us love efficiency. So many of us like facts. So many of us just like being right in a way that you cannot deny. And that is what citing a fact, citing a strong source provides. That does not negate the fact that there are opinions and there are lives being experienced that have not gone on a single fact their whole life. Ted, who lives in Florida, did not search a fact his whole life. Loves it. Loves it. Lives a better life than how many people? That person who's regurgitating facts, dumping them online on 4 followers is living what experience? Has to be right. Because there's no market there for somebody to even disagree. Okay? No, there's no market for somebody to disagree on that either. Even the people who are top of the online space, they might sound common now. Like they might, common's a terrible word for that. They might sound normal, but they were challenging views. They were saying stuff that were getting people to wake up. And that's really a great point to make in this article. Waking up. If something makes you wake up, feel energy, all right, that thing sold you. Because that's what I could say I'm doing all day in my life, is trying to chase that feeling. I want to feel fresh, awake, engaged. The antithesis of refreshed, engaged, energized is highly efficient decisions that are being followed with no understanding of inefficiencies that might lead to better human experience, which has nothing to do with psychology, because psychology does it too. How many in the psychology field don't understand what it means to be human? Just because you empathize with somebody, or you sympathize, or you're walking through and you're saying I understand, or helping them, or doing the antithesis or doing somewhere in between. I'm trying to hit every one of you and say that doesn't mean that you understand human experience. Because I wouldn't be in this office right now if there was human experience. Okay? So, human experience is imperfect. The shiny object, the illusion of the shiny object is the article that we're talking about today, number one. And number two, the illusion of the shiny object is the thing that is not perfect. It is not reliable. That is the point that the author is making. So I want to stick on that. It's not reliable, but it looks really pretty and it gets us excited. What more do we want than that? Why this article is important, though, is when you bet against that. Reliability, efficiency, guys, come on. In the absence of that, it's just as miserable. The illusion of the shiny objects, wanting to talk about the shiny objects being valuable and something that we want in society, is because of the present time of things feeling so calculated, so structured and processed that it feels like the strictest cultures in our world have completely influenced how many people. I say we take all of the components that were the best of that and then get back to enjoying life. Because one thing that I know for sure is that we don't want to slip into dictatorships and stuff like that. Let them deal with that. But let's take the being precise, following some facts and all that and data. And what else did we pick up? Not being, being pretty understanding about people's preferences and things like that. Let's add that in there too. Because there's other things that we can talk about. We don't need to focus on that. Come on. That's low conversation anyway. That's 4chan conversation. We don't need to be arguing for that. We don't need to be arguing in favor of it too. So stop right there with that example on my voice. What I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are people, and the shiny new object, let's have it. Let's love what some might call placebo, but let's love having fun. Let's have fun experiencing. Let's have fun working for the business that you might take a while to find. But there's other people like me. We're the same age. We're not even driven by success, maybe. We're driven by excellence. I want to be excellent. I don't care if I'm washing dishes. I want to be excellent. That dishwasher never stops moving. Okay? There's excellence tied to that. That thing's unloaded by the time that goes through. Second it goes, yanks up and zips down. There's not a second that thing isn't running. Right there. Number one is that point is excellence. Dishes are dried. That takes time. That's difficult. But dishes are dried. That thing's always moving. Okay? My movement in the kitchen better wake you up. If you are back of house listening to this, you know what I mean. If you haven't experienced that, I can't wait until you do. Because I can tell you there's a guy on the line that I'm working at, and he moves like that. He learned the same thing that I learned. He's older than me. Wow, does that ever motivate me? That snaps, man. And it's not efficient. It's efficient. It is efficient. But it is a different type of efficiency. And it's something that I learned from 3 chefs ago. Chef said fluid. We're I believe he said something along the lines we're running fluid right now or something like that. Made me think of the hose on the side of the wall, those huge tubes with water pushing out. Think that's not powerful? It's more powerful than your efficient solution. Your efficient solution feels like it can break. That water ain't getting stopped. That water's not getting stopped. Because there's 8 things going. When I see those videos of people working fast at assembly lines, it ain't nothing. It ain't nothing. We could do that, and we could also be smiling and moving like we're dancing, ladies and gentlemen. That's the feeling. If you haven't seen that back of house, because it doesn't look like that, but I can tell you, there's a certain upright posture in the kitchen that gets achieved that doesn't look awkward, and it's when you are just moving. You are gliding. You are just ripping through the kitchen. All right. And that's when you are flying. You're flying at that point. And if you think about it's hard to explain. It really is. You're moving at a pace that you're going to crash into half the people that you're walking by. You basically know the positions of everybody in the kitchen, the position of every angle that you can hit, and you're checking them all, and you are not stopping. All right? You want to talk about calculations? There's calculations in real life. That's when stuff starts stacking, all right? And in the kitchen, anybody who works back of house knows that those things stack, and you get to the point where you are just barely even moving. You could just stand there still, and that's that feeling, you know, you are just hitting level of fluid. All right. One movement and you're pushing like what is that, gallons? I don't know how much. I'm not somebody who works with fluid. All right. Those are your reviews. That's how much you're getting done. Why that's important is because these are all subjects. These are all things that you learn when you are not following articles like this, but using them for discussion, of course. So thank you to the author for writing this. The illusion of the shiny object. The illusion of the shiny object. True value isn't about the thrill of the purchase. It's about the ease of operation. This is something that you're going to read in that article. And you're going to find out that it's exactly in line with what we're talking about here. You know that you should use the stable product. Why not get the stable product? Okay. I did talk about not making an argument in the antithesis of the shiny object. The antithesis of the shiny object is the thing that just works. It's efficient. It's there. We have it. You can almost think of AI when it comes to that. All right. We have it. That is a baseline brain for us to all fall back on if needing to be queried. All right. We've all got it there. It is an average available solution. It is the market rate of a brain, of intellect. Okay. Artificial intelligence is the market rate intellect available for us all when needed. That takes people who know how to build stuff that is, exciting, shiny, and news good. But, you know, at some point, you've got to realize that after we have this discussion about shiny, you see that feeling you get? You're like, well, now I kind of just want something that works. This author did a good job about mentioning exactly that. Mention that at 3 a.m. when the product stops working, you kind of just wish that it worked. You see these times when you're not all hyped up and needing all this extra during the day. This is daytime stuff. When you are at home at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., doing your taxes and going through your banking application, and that feature is not working to download the spreadsheet for the essential numbers that you actually need to provide to somebody else, and now you're being told that it's a week to get those printed at the bank. What kind of solution do you want there? That's just to convey a feeling. That is antithetical to shiny and new. But shiny and new. My main point is that it does provide a ton of value. I've made the example of organizations, companies that I've worked at, something that is core enough to be able to tie to experiences that everybody has probably had, if in the workforce, at any organization. The falling asleep narrative, which drives through to heavily progressive ideology. So I know that is relevant because it is very supported. Okay. The law of diminishing returns was mentioned in this article. Okay. And right before that, he mentions demos, product demos. The product demos can be perfect, but reliable and stable. Okay. And the law of diminishing returns works really well after that point because, you could polish it up, but at some point, you don't really need more than that. Okay. But there is exciting. Don't get me wrong. But excitement is typically found, take this from somebody who works in the kitchen. Excitement is typically found in providing you something that exists, something that's available, something that is totally normal at the right time. If you think that you have to continuously reach new levels of originality or new levels of gain to be happy, no, you just need the right gain. All right. If you work in the markets, your broker is going to tell you need to make another dollar. I'm going to tell you you're going to need to make the right dollar because you're listening to a podcast. You're not listening to somebody who's trying to make you money. And I think that you should be dealing with your broker to find that. And you see how the whole world opens up when we think like that? Is because of articles like this that write like this. Law of diminishing returns is an important point to keep in mind on this next part of the conversation. Demo versus reality. Who thinks about China and who thinks about North Korea right off the bat? Anybody from there heavily in support? Why not hear me out? If not, buzz off. Honestly, don't care. Okay? I've had it with places that do this. It's all marketing. And then what are you funding in the bottom? Dictatorship. I've had it. All right? All the shiny new tech. This article got really relevant. You know why? Because it's the illusion of the shiny object has many interpretations and it's used in many different ways. We talked about a very small one. Board of directors, small company, and also in your personal life to stay motivated. Let's talk about how countries use this because it might be a little different. China giving you that flashy perspective, engineers, of all these flashy things, these cars that are doing what? This author is mentioning reliability and stability over that. Reliability and stability is what you define something like the United States relative to China. And I am saying relative to China, we are talking about two superpowers that are painting different narratives of the world. One is the child who is building things out because he's spending all of his time in one area to make things that are cool. Great job. You did that one thing well, but nobody wants you as a leader. Ladies and gentlemen, I want the United States as a leader because that person is not only able to meet that need in about 4 years after that kid, but they're also able to have all the other stuff that would come with like another 40 years of experience being added onto that kid. And every year that lives on, it goes even further. And why that's important is because a country doesn't die, ladies and gentlemen. It keeps on carrying forward. You cannot beat that. You cannot beat the fact that the United States has a democracy and it has had a democracy through how much GDP? Through how much GDP per capita has the United States of America had democracy that's been checking every single step? How much even further than democracy, something that could be acquired by a country? How long has the United States been under the microscope of every country and every political system for relative to China? China has not even received it. China has not even received the okay from a single country, I can guarantee it, to have their figures trusted, their economic figures trusted, because they don't even have the democracy to ensure that their government that publishes a single thing is able to say anything. So their alternative is let's make some cool stuff and make you love us so that you start saying, I wish my country was like your country. How about you realize that that is a shiny object being put in front of you and that you should just take the technology like they're taking it? Because honestly, it's a common fact published in research. If you want me to pull it up on the screen, I'm not going to do it because you can have it on Grok. You can have it on WhatsApp. You can have, like, that's a mistake, but probably on WhatsApp at this point. You can hear it on ChatGPT. You can hear it on Claude. You can hear it anywhere. They will all say the same thing. There's reporting from people that are in organizations. I've searched this. I don't have the organization on the top of my mind, but I've searched this. They are saying that counterfeiting problem, it's huge. It's not just a stereotype. It is huge. All right. AI, them using AI, it's not them. All right. But the country does this. You don't think that the country does this? Where do you think all those shiny buildings come from? Number one, I don't even want to live there. Stop dreaming about sci-fi to stop getting this dream being sold to you by China. If you want that, go there. Because I can tell you every one of your tax dollars is funding something that you don't support. But even more than that, that sci-fi vision, look at what it got them. They're walking around with cameras, enjoying things like this, advertising CCP. And they're doing what? Living a computer? Dude, anybody who is like Linux is kind of loving this right now, hopefully. Because I'm not Linux, but I can tell you the purity of a server, that concept made sense to me. All of this stuff is on a server. You are making your whole life about computer and tech and sci-fi and stuff like that. None of the people in China look like they're living life. Who do you see there that is living life? Another aspect to that. Okay? Another aspect to that. Because all I see over there is people that are satisfied being told that they are the best, the most efficient. Like, after this conversation, you see how I interpret that. You're the best. You're no, not the best. You're the most efficient. I can tell you the Chinese kitchen that dishes out plates at 10, 15 bucks and smashes it and has no care about the community at all. There's every restaurant I've clicked on in Ottawa has a social presence or has a presence online and shows what they do. Every Chinese restaurant that I've clicked on does not have a single website or any email that you can contact them at. Does not care. I don't care about that. Your kitchen sucks. And it is the same thing as the components that get made. Thanks for the components, but we could honestly find it somewhere else. When we talk about that fluid movement in the kitchen, I don't need to do that. We're building jets on this GDP per capita. We don't make components. We don't need to. It is called competitive advantage. It's not because you have an absolute advantage. How about you start understanding that? Because I don't think your people do. You are not better than me. You're not better than anybody in North America. You're not better than anybody in NATO. You're not better than anybody in Africa. Honestly, Africa would probably have a more pure manufacturing process than you because you have probably ridden that thing up with efficiency and completely stained the output because you don't touch it. Do you use that thing that you threw off the assembly line? I could tell you here they do. Because I've used our cars. Cars will probably test. Cars probably test. But shiny new objects is supposed to say that countries do this, guys. Shiny new object, China. Yeah, it's exciting. Go travel there and see some cool stuff. I'm not saying that China is not going to make some cool stuff because that's kind of what you do if you're like, you know, like the rich criminal friend who's like behaving, who has all this money from like Bitcoin. Like when you kind of are not aware of that, it's like, all right, we're eating fancy dinners and stuff like that. That's kind of like, this is cool. But then you see all the problems. This person doesn't stop fighting. Can you stop fighting? You can't even tell them that because they're aggressive. You see, because me and them are eating the same. I almost want to go like that, you know, right? At this point, we're all the same. Fancy dinner, good food. Actually, that part is different. They are the same in the fancy dinner. Money. Nobody wakes up for money. Nobody wakes up for money. That's why I bet on the on NATO, US all day, baby. All day. You want to follow that efficiency crap because you need your vision of what higher education means to check out. You check out and go over to China because I'm telling you right now that education has nothing to do with efficiency and rigidity. It's the ability to be fluid. That is how you surpass all your problems. That is what makes people like something like that. That is a country advertising itself. At the core is an economic system that makes nobody able to trust them. Because the United States has everything checked. Everything that needs to be there has public officials or public information. And the only thing available is for people to make conspiracies of what causes a certain thing to happen. The number of checks and the number of people that are looking for different dollar figures, which is not mentioned enough in public conversation. I say public conversation as if this is some deep private chat enough. Okay. How about the debt holders of the United States? You think that they don't care to make sure that something is solid there, to make sure that that company, oh my goodness, that country does not go bankrupt, that country does not cause a problem for them by lying? It would be in their best interest to dump that and pump them by talking about it. If that research was available. You don't think that for that dollar amount that there's not somebody who could leak information? Happens all the time. Not for that reason, but it is part of that system. If it was there, it would be leaked. I can guarantee it. If it was big enough. And the good thing is, the last point I can make, shiny object can sometimes happen at the same time as the efficiency that the author is writing about. The author does not mention the United States, China, anything like that. I tied it in because it's a perfect example to make, but it is a perfect discussion to end this, to add something to this article, because thank you very much for the subject. Great focus, and it turns out to have led to a fantastic chat. You might not agree on anything that I said in terms of my conclusions. Those are my personal conclusions at the present time, based on everything that has formed my opinion. Doesn't mean that I don't enjoy your article and that you didn't raise valid points that we both agree, I'm sure, in your article, because small agreements, sure, let's stick on those at minimum. But the United States, how I define it, you might define something else as this. Why don't we just stick to that? I just removed the word United States. I'm proud of that country. Let me talk about it. Let me talk about it. I let you talk about what you want because you're proud of something, and it represents something that you care about. I'm gonna say the United States. I'm not gonna be a person who's gonna bandwagon on shutting down ideas. Okay? Because this so happens to be a perfect example. Shiny object meets stability. Okay? Here's where a lot of people, I don't care. Okay? Trump, that administration, shiny object meets stability. If you are actually following what is happening and not just stuck in some disgusting kitchen that is built on rules with nobody following anything, with customers complaining, getting dishes that are like, let alone wrong, let alone like pasta sauce and meatballs that tasted like you cooked them out of a can, or just tasted normal. I'm buying to feed my hunger. Who does that? I'm going there for an experience. That's called fine dining, ladies and gentlemen. You go there and that tastes like you're just feeding yourself. Get out. Get out. Get out. Find a spot. Takes word on the street. All right? Find the best spot. Ask around. They know where it's at. You'll hit a restaurant where I'm working. It wakes you up. That's the United States. We don't have that controversy, though. It takes one idea to have that. That is politics, different from the kitchen. Everybody's welcome. I'm not speaking for the kitchen, too. But the United States is a perfect example of how to end this article and end this conversation, because you can have the shiny object at the same time as efficiency, stability, and things that check out. And that is kind of the definition of democracy. Fluidity, democracy, stability, and shiny object at the same time. It is just delayed. Compared to a command economy that throws a shiny object at you quickly. That is one of the big points of this article. That is that reference attached to countries is not something that's done. And hopefully that is my contribution to this. Because you can go and talk all day on social media about the brand new thing, even if it's tested, I will give them that. I'm not going to say untested, unreliable, and dangerous. It's tested. They put it out quick, and there's just not, there's not enough of a market for it here yet. And in places like that, it's valuable to them to have it there first to say, even though you don't have private businesses that are running this or corporations that are running this, we put it there and we are operating at a loss. That is what a command economy can do. And they are doing that with engineers. Engineers need to read articles like this. Thank you for this author. Put this on the platform where engineers are gobbling up content all day. The user base is largely psychology and engineers. Engineers, read this article. Stop falling for shiny objects with things that large. I said at the start of the article that you should be following shiny objects for things to wake yourself up. You need to talk about countries to wake yourself up. How do you wake yourself up when you meet the dictator, when you say the wrong thing because you changed the economic system because you needed to wake up? I can wake up with the right coffee. How about you find the right kitchen before you change my country? I'm going to leave that there because this is a fantastic way to wrap up this episode. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I presented this article in the way that you would not have thought. And thank this author or argue this author. Who cares? This is called discussion. Just don't be toxic. You send me to sleep with your toxicity that is just repeating the same thing. Tell me something original or learn to write it in a way that works to wake me up. You want to send me to sleep? I can feel it in your writing. I get skipped. Okay? It gets skipped. Stale writing is felt. Wake people up so that they don't go and want to turn into China that is a dictatorship.